Hello and welcome back to the IET bookshelf with me, Mark Reynard. Our next book from the shelf is A Galaxy of Our Own, Amazing Stories of Women in Space by author Libby Jackson. From small steps to giant leaps, A Galaxy of Our Own tells 50 stories of inspirational women who've been fundamental to the story of humans in space, from scientists to astronauts to some surprising roles in between. Now, it covers inspirational women from Ada Lovelace in the 19th century to the women behind the Apollo missions, from the astronauts breaking records on the International Space Station to those blazing the way in the race to get to Mars. A Galaxy of Our Own reveals extraordinary stories, champions unsung heroes, and celebrates remarkable achievements from around the world. It really is a brilliant read. It's packed full of both amazing female role models and mind-blowing secrets of space travel. Well, we're absolutely delighted to have you join us today, Libby. So welcome to the bookshelf.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark. It's a great honor to be here.
Well, it was a great read and I really enjoyed it. But can you start by telling us, why you felt it was so important to write a book like this that tells the story of all these inspirational women?
I've grown up being fascinated by space and human spaceflight in particular, and I've been lucky enough to work in the field now for nearly all of my career. But it is a male-dominated career still today. Things are changing. It's great. We're seeing astronaut classes selected now who are generally now gender balanced, which is wonderful to see. But I think it's really important that people, not just girls, but people of, everyone sees that space really is something for everyone. And that's what I wanted to get across in the book. Not just, in fact, that it is definitely a place where women belong and women play their part and are welcome. But there is so many different jobs that you can do, and it's not just about the astronauts who are there. They're fantastic, they're visible, they are the top of the pyramid when it comes to human spaceflight. But there are thousands of people all around the world in all sorts of different jobs who get them there. And if I can open people's eyes to that, make them see that this could be something they could get involved in, then I would be really happy that was done what I hoped it would do.
I mean, you chose 50 stories as well. I mean, that's no mean feat on its own, but the amount of research that must have gone into that must have been like immense. I mean, how did you go about all that research, to find all of the information and then put it in an engaging and accessible way? Was that difficult?
It was so much fun. Something I often enjoy doing, digging into things. And there were some obvious names for me on that list to pick. So Helen Sharman is in there, first British astronaut, of course she is. You've got people like Sally Ride, who was the first American woman in space. Valentina Tereshkova, first woman in space at all. The big obvious names. And then there was some sort of people that, oh, okay, yes, I've heard about them and I want to go and get involved in them. People like the women who built the machines, the computers that steered the Apollo spacecraft to the moon, and Margaret Hamilton, who wrote who was in charge of the team who wrote the code to do all of that. And what was fun was, whilst I knew some of these names, I didn't know the story. So digging into them, discovering things that I didn't know, then being able to put that together and share them with people, saying, you heard about this and heard about that, was lots of fun. And I wrote the book in a way that I hope either young people can really get involved with, and I was imagining sort of telling these stories almost to my nieces and nephews and young people. But I always reckon that if you can put it across to a young person, you're putting it across to everybody, and that's the way I write. It is really by speaking out loud, talking things through, imagining telling this story to someone, and put it all together. And I should give a shout out at this point because I did the words. But the pictures in it, the illustrations, make the book for me, and they it was lovely. They were all done by students at the London College of Communications, which was sorted out by the publishers, and it was so lovely to sort of see these illustrations evolve. I gave the artists some feedback because I like to make sure that things are accurate in space. They've got published. I've now followed their careers. This book was published a few years ago. They've gone on, they've become illustrators, their work is everywhere. And it was so lovely to give a platform to people in art to show how art can be part of space and engineering, bring all that together. So,
And
yeah,
have you got any of the originals? So have you got any of those original pieces that they drew for your illustrations then?
no, I don't. I wish I did. I've got some real favourites in there. I did go and meet some of the students. They had an event, and I got all of them to autograph my copy of the book. So I sort of have, I like to think of it as some of the originals. But Nate gave me an idea. I should go. Oh, I
Yeah,
wonder if out there.
definitely. I mean, when they watch this, they're going to be sending them to you, I'm sure. When you're looking at the research, and you were thinking about the 50 that you kind of honed it down to, were there some that were just, I mean, you might have started with 60. Were there some that you just, I can't find out enough information about these people, even though I should be able to? Were there some more difficult than others to find out the real insight into?
Yeah, and one story that's in the book, and a name by the skin of their teeth, is the story around the women who built the memory modules that went into the Apollo computers. So these are the women from Waltham, Massachusetts, in the States, and um, they were watchmakers originally. They What happened was that the engineers came up, figured out how to build the Apollo computer. And back in the 1960s, computers were huge things, not the size of our phones. I've got mine here, something way less powerful than my phone was going to take the size of a room. They had to shrink it into something about the size of a shoebox and then stick it on top of a rocket that was going to vibrate and accelerate and launch and blast off at tens and thousands of miles an hour and get all the way to the moon and not break. And computers are really delicate. So the engineers invented this rope memory, which was rings and copper wire, and you could thread this copper wire around the ring or through the ring, and it would define whether it was a 1 or a 0, the language of computers. And to do all that, to make this stuff was super duper fiddly work. And so, where could you find people who were really good at really fine, detailed work? You turn to these watchmakers. And in Waltham, Massachusetts, there was a huge group of women who were skilled at doing this. Now, these women then were hired to work on Apollo. And I found all of this out in my research. They were so skilled that they were paid to sit and do nothing because the managers, the race was on. America wanted to beat the Soviet Union to the moon, and if they went back to their watchmaking, they were going to lose those skills. You can go on YouTube and you can find all this information. Now, there are fantastic videos of people explaining this rope memory, the engineers at the engineering company. And it's all the men in the shirts and the suits explaining it, and the women in the background working things out. And what I wanted to tell was the story of the women. And I knew of them and I knew what they did, but I could not find anybody's specific name. And did my research, go and try and track down the company they work for. You go to the company's website, and I am in two minds about whether to name and shame them, but you go to the website and it says, yeah, not interested. There's a note somewhere that essentially says, all historical things, please don't bother us. We don't keep these records. It was that sorry. And so I had told the story of this and was still like, there must be something out there. Who were these people? And right before the book went to print, and we are talking days, in my head it's 2-3 days, it might have been a week, but it was that tight. I finally managed to track down a BBC News article from about, I don't know, early 2000s. It was in the archives. And in there was a quote from someone called Mary Lou Rogers. And so I had one name to pin down and to at least be able to say Mary Lou Rogers was part of this fantastic group of women. But that's the only one I could find. And to me, that's so sad that these people who played such an important role in building Apollo and getting us to the moon, so important they were paid to sit and do nothing. And we don't know who they are. And there's so many other stories like that that should be uncovered, can be uncovered. And you said all the research. I am not a professional historian. I'm doing this in a sort of my interested way. There are many better people out there who I know are doing a lot of great work to uncover these untold stories. And actually, what I learned from all of this was go and talk to the elderly people in your life and find out what they did and who they were, because these stories die. And in fact, I mentioned Mary Sherman Morgan. Her story is in the book. And I found out about that because I was, talking to people, which story should I tell? Someone said, you've got to read this book. You read the book about her life, which was written by her son, George Morgan. And George only found out what his mother had done and how amazing her contributions were after she passed away, because she was talking to her friends and finding out what she'd done. And again, those stories nearly got lost, and it's been George who uncovered it all. So yeah, keep talking to those people in your life to find out what it was they did.
And you've just been talking there so beautifully about all the things in the background that go on. But, one of the things we haven't touched on yet is that you're actually like a leading UK expert in human spaceflight. But you actually worked in mission control in the industry, didn't you? So just tell us a little bit about that as well, because that's a phenomenal story.
Well, yeah, it is. I mean, I smile because it was something I dreamt of doing. I can't believe I got to do it. But I did nothing more in the end than apply for jobs. In a nutshell, and actually, if you get the book, there's I've written an introduction that kind of tracks some of it, so you can go and read the book. It's all there. But basically, I was fascinated by space when I was little, and did the subjects I enjoyed doing, which was science, maths, and so on. I actually decided I didn't want to be an engineer, which is perhaps a reflection on how engineering was portrayed to me, because I look back now and go, I should totally have been an engineer, and I ended up doing an engineering degree. But I did a physics degree, I did a space engineering degree, as I got older, I discovered that you can work in the space industry, and you can work in the space industry here in the UK, and that was not really clear to me growing up. But I did. I got into mission operations, which was what I dreamed of. I'd read books. So many books about Apollo, and it was always mission control that fascinated me. And then I realized that you can work in mission control. And so I really just looked for jobs in mission control. It was that simple, really. On the jobs website, I moved to Germany. I got a job at the Columbus Control Center, which is where the European control team for the International Space Station is based. And I spent 7 years working there alongside the astronauts, helping make sure that the European payloads, the science experiments happened. And it was fantastic. And I've gone on from there. I still work in the industry today. And mission control is as good as it looks on TV. It is fantastic. It's fascinating. If people would say to me, what do you do? Is it like in the movies? Okay? Yeah, it wasn't as glamorous or exciting. We weren't sending humans to the moon, but we had humans, and we still do, living and working in space all the time. And you've got to look after them. You've got to solve the problem. And that was the thing that made mission operations exciting for me. And that's where I go, I should have been an engineer, because I like problem solving.
Exactly. But you were just saying there, they're in space all the time. And when you see the news and you see things like that, you see mission control as just the sort of blast off stage, really, and everybody cheering because, the rocket's taken off or whatever. But mission control isn't just that, is it? It goes on for the whole mission, presumably.
Yeah, whether it's humans in space or the satellites that we've been talking about that we all rely on every day, probes, heading off into the deepest, darkest solar system. They have teams of people sitting round the clock, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, looking after these things. We're getting better now with some automation, so sometimes you can kind of let the computers look after it, but you still need humans in the loop. I caught a fantastic news article just the other day, worth looking up, from the European Space Agency, about how the mission controllers there saved a spacecraft in about 3 hours because something went wrong. There was a reaction wheel which keeps this thing pointing in the right direction. It stopped working. And if they hadn't have fixed it, that would have doomed the spacecraft. And they stayed calm, they were trained, they solved the problem, they got it done. And whether it's you're getting humans to the moon, whether you are working out what's happened on an experiment that's in space that the astronauts having to deal with, or whether it's telecommunication satellites, that's what it's all about. And I still smile now because it is, to me, the best place in the world to work. And you're there in the thick of the action. I come back to it. It's solving problems. You know, I used to love the days when it all went wrong, because you'd have to think about it and figure out what to do. And
Not too wrong.
There is, me, always that degree of satisfaction. Okay, yes, I've done it. I've solved it. We've job well done. And whether that's a crossword puzzle or a jigsaw puzzle or a problem in space, that's what I quite like doing and always have done, actually.
Now, in the book, in the early stages of it, there's lots of lovely sort of diagrams about the kind of history of space exploration and the dates and the timelines. Why did you feel it was important to put those timelines in? And do you think that's kind of essential to the book? Because I quite enjoyed seeing those.
I think this comes back to perhaps what we were talking about and my engineering, sort of particular mind, because these things are dotted through history. There's 50 stories, 50 women dotted through, and where they sit and how it all comes together, it's not always easy to tell. And so it was a thread that would bring it together and allow me to tell that story of the space race, because you have to, for me anyway, to understand it, you have to go right back. You have to go right back to the Second World War. You can't, for me, escape the fact that rocket technology came out of two opposing factions trying to bomb each other, and it's terrible what happened. And but to not sort of acknowledge that that's where it came from, to me, you then don't understand how it's all grown and what it is that we're doing. You put people on top of a rocket, it's a very carefully controlled exploding bomb that's getting there, and the risks that are involved, and the astronauts understand that. So that's why that thread to me is helpful, and it helps us look forward to see what's coming next.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, there's lots of lovely quotes in the book from each of the women, and usually they've got a kind of an encouraging message at the end that really kind of drives home that anyone could, if they really worked hard, get themselves to the point where perhaps they could go into space, and also really encourages people to go into engineering and STEM and the sciencey areas and the whole, like you say, the whole industry around space. But what else do you hope readers will take away from reading the book?
For me, the thread that draws them all together, and that I really I don't say became aware of, but came so consciously aware of as you put all them together. The thing that unites all these people, they have come from different times, from different challenges and so on, that they did what they wanted to do. And they didn't listen to people who said to them, you can't do that, you shouldn't do that. You're too old, you're too young, you don't look right, you're a woman, for whatever reason, they ignored them. They stuck to what they want to do, what they knew that they, were drawn to, and kept going. And that, to me, is my message to anyone of any age, really. It's what you want to do, and what you want to do and can do and are able to do has nothing to do with what other people think of you or what they think you should or could or not do. You know your own self, and to have that confidence and strength to keep doing what it is you want to do. I hope is really the underlying message that comes out of it. And if you do that, world's the limit. This book is about space and people who have found their path through it. But I think if you talk to anyone, actually, you do anything, go, really enjoying it, and whether that's the sort of very visible people today, we've just had the Olympics, or the Olympian gold medalists, or people who are leaders, people who have won Oscars or Premier League footballers, or you name it. They never had a roadmap when they were little. It's just a mad, crazy goal, and you just keep doing things, you work hard, and you have that self-belief, and you get there. And I think that's true of anyone in any job who's doing what they enjoy doing. And yeah, that was what I got out of the book, writing the book, and that's what I hope people can take away from it and apply to their lives. It doesn't have to be about space, it doesn't have to be about women in space, just about, being a human being somewhere on this planet.
Absolutely. Now, quick question there then. You've been that close to space in terms of mission control and working in the industry. Have you ever, is it a desire for yourself? Have you wanted to get into space, or is that just you happy being sort of behind the people who go into space?
Give me a ticket and I'll go up there. I've been lucky enough to experience floating, microgravity. You don't have to go to space to float. There are aeroplanes that fly in parabolas over and over again. And was part of an experiment that allowed me, so I ended up doing that. I have to say,
Wow.
as much fun as it looks, it's fantastic, it's brilliant.
Is it?
Um,
Brilliant.
but my heart first and foremost was always in mission control, and there was a European astronaut selection while I was there in mission control, and loads of people applied, and I said, "Do you want to?" No, I'm happy here. It was but there's another story in the book, Ginger Kerrick's story, and I admire Ginger so much. Um, and the moral of the story is actually the path you dream of might not work out, but sometimes that's okay, because she ended up being a flight director, and she says it's the best job in the world, and I quite agree with her. Really, it's
And sometimes you're on that path and something else pops up, and actually that's a better path than the one you thought you wanted to be on. So it's kind of these things come along and just sort of mushroom or snowball, don't they? They just get more and more exciting if you happen to be on that the right mindset, I think.
I'm a big believer in that very ancient saying that I will misquote, but it will be all right in the end. If it's not all right, it's not yet the end. You just got to keep going and look out, and life figures itself out.
Now we've got to come to who's your favourite woman in the book, and why. That's a question that everybody's going to want to know. Which one of the 50?
It is, and I can't answer it. I never have. It's like asking me to choose, my favorite child, my favorite niece and nephew. There are so many lovely stories for lots of different reasons, and some of them we've mentioned. Others we have. Peggy Whitson is in there. Peggy Whitson I love because she's a superb astronaut, but she was a scientist for ages first and kind of kept going, and then she's turned into this amazing, very well-renowned astronaut who's just kick-ass, and sorry, I haven't say that. But she's did loads and loads of spacewalks and sorted out the space station. But the backstory of how she got there was something I didn't know. You go right back to the early days. I can't pick one. You just read the book.
Yeah.
Loads of them in there.
Now, we touched on this a little bit earlier, but do you think that the public perception of the space industry is still male dominated, and is that actually right now? Is it starting to level out in the numbers?
I'm certain that the perception is there that it is. It is still, also the stats will tell you it is male dominated, but it is getting better. And I think people have a much better awareness of the importance of role models and imagery and presentation. And even if you're at a space conference and it's very male dominated, you don't have to, you can show that there are women there too, and that it's there. And I think that's important for the younger generation to see. One of the things I like to say, and again, this is simplistic, but I think it's also true of engineering. You see it in the book. In times gone by, there were major barriers to women getting involved. They were just not allowed to apply for jobs, or if they could, the people who were hiring them didn't think that they should be there. And that is not the case now. There are women in these industries, and I'm not for a minute pretending that there are not problems and that we live in a magical, balanced world, because there aren't. But young people today shouldn't be afraid ever of going into something that they want to, and breaking down those barriers. And I would hate for anyone to go, "Oh, I can't do engineering because I'm a girl, because then I'm not welcome." It's absolute nonsense. We need more people. Where I think we have challenges actually is in sort of wider society, and gendification of toys and everything has got, I think, worse. You can walk into shops, and even if there aren't a girls and boys label in a store, there's a pink side and there's a blue side, and you're going to see rockets and dinosaurs on the blue side, and you're going to see unicorns and cupcakes on the pink side. And I don't think that's good for anyone because, everybody can do whatever they want, and boys can be ballerinas and girls can be rocket scientists, and they should feel able to do so. So I think there's still things that we should do, but yeah, anyone ever thinking about engineering, or so on, just come join us. Don't be,
Yeah.
don't worry that it's not for you, that you can't see anyone there. There are people. It's where it comes back to the importance of the imagery, so that people don't are aware that there are people like them in these industries, and I'm sure can get better at doing it too.
And you've had obviously a fantastic career. You've done loads of different things, but how do you sort of get across to young people that STEM, space, technology is a fantastic career to be in?
I hope through my books, through sharing and smiling about it, science and technology in particular, engineering, it underpins all of our everyday lives. We can't do anything without touching something that somebody has engineered and designed and coded, and hasn't probably gone through 3 different satellites to get the data from A to B. And we need people to come and to get involved in that. And it's it's essential. Otherwise, our lives will fall apart. Art and crafts are also essential because we need those expressive outlets as well. It comes back to why I just want people to do the things that they find interesting, and that makes them happy, without sort of any real regard to what society might think of what they do or don't do. So to me, yeah, best way to get people in, meet people, talk about it, read the stories, learn about it. And if anything ever goes, oh, exciting, I want to go learn more about that, go learn more about it, find out. And I hope through that, we'll show that engineering is a fantastic place to be. Equally, if engineering is something you don't want to do, then don't come join us. Go do the thing that you want to do. It's not for everybody, but if you think it is for you, then it absolutely is.
But it's interesting because the engineering companies still need the designers, the creatives, the artists. They still need the marketers, the salespeople. They still need the businessmen, the financiers, the accountants. So you can be a bit like in space. You can be involved in engineering and technology, but you don't have to be the engineer. That's the amazing thing about it.
Yeah, it's true of everything, and take your skills where you find exciting. Companies that do something that you think is worthwhile is something you're interested in.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you've had this book out. What's next for you then, Libby? Is there another inspirational book? Is the next 50? Are you doing something different? What's next in it for you coming up?
I've got another book out. It's come out in paperback just a couple of months ago. It's been out in hardback for a year. The audio book is out there. It's called Space Explorers, and it's a similar vein, but it's different. And it takes for me that story of exploration, that has threaded it through and tells it bedtime story format. It's the book I wish I had had when I was about 10 or 12. So it takes you right back to the early days of Yuri Gagarin. He was sitting there, no one had ever been in space before, and then he floats down in the middle of the farmer's field and had to ask a farmer if he could use her phone to let mission control know that he got back because no one knew he was there. You can gets to Apollo 13. Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong sitting there on the moon, done the spacewalk. That was the high bit. Nearly didn't land because they nearly crash landed because they nearly ran out of fuel. But they also nearly didn't get home because they bumped around and a switch had got broken off, and they ended up not telling mission control, shoving a felt tip pen in this hole, and that was enough, so it got them home. So I had so much fun taking, again, not just these stories that I have grown up with and love, and telling them in a way to get the next generation interested in the history of what happened, but also these fun little bits that you just didn't even know that happened, the adventure and so on. So that's out now, published by Hachette. It's available in the States too if there's any international people listening in. That's there. And what comes next is a good question. the pandemic has tied me to laptops, and I have to say that has been a challenge to spend any more time tied to a laptop for writing. But I am looking forward to life getting back to normal and out and about, and the thought of then being able to spend some time writing and tied to a laptop won't be yeah, I'll have a bit more time away from it.
And have you found yourself now sort of just once you get your first book out of the way, have you found that all these other books just come pouring out of you now, that you've got the kind of bug for writing?
It's about finding, for me, the stories, the things I want to get across. I have a full-time day job as well, and so it's, you know, yeah, I enjoy talking, and I think that's the other thing that the pandemic has done, has stopped that interaction. I have to tell the stories, and then you get there, and even talking to you now, yeah, that the stories of the people behind it, I'd love to do that. Mars is big at the minute, you know, and getting involved there, and learning about Mars. And I'd like to basically learn about something and then go, oh yeah, this is really great, I want to tell more people about that. And that's where the ideas will come from, and we'll see what's around the corner and what comes next. I don't know, and but you know, I think there'll be something at some point.
Brilliant. Libby, that's kind of brought us to the end of our little chat now, but you know, you're going to be joining us for the live Q&A, so we'll look forward to that. Thank you once again for joining us. Really appreciate it. It was a great insight into the book and the whole world that you've been living in. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll see you for the Q&A.
Yeah, we will.
Take care now. Well, hello, everybody. We're now joined live by Libby Jackson. Thank you so much for joining us. And it's great to have you here live. It really is. How's 2022 been for you already?
Thanks for having me back. Oh, it's been dark. It's been dim. January can be a bit of a slog, but the sun's out now. The bulbs are starting to come up. You know, it's yeah, the things are looking up. It's great. Fantastic, isn't it? Well, look, I've got your book here. It's honestly, it's been a great read. It's one of those books as well you can dip in and out of, isn't it? Because it's really well chapterized. There's different people and different things. So it's one of those lovely books that if you're busy and you've got children and they keep interrupting and a novel's a bit much, this is a book people can really get into, isn't it? Oh, it is, and I hope it's one that people can read with their little people in their life, their big people in their life, yeah, or just go, oh, flick through and go, didn't know that, didn't know this. Really tried to capture all the different aspects of what goes on to put people into space. Absolutely. Now, you don't just focus on astronauts in the book. That's really important. You focus on like engineers, scientists, computer programmers, nurses, and loads more. So how did you decide which women you put in the book? Was that quite difficult? It was. There were some names in there that when I said, right, 50 people, who's going to go in? Who's going to go in the book? Some to me were obvious. I wanted to tell the story of Helen Sharman. I know Helen's flight. I wanted to tell the story of Valentina Tereshkova, the first woman in space. And there were some of the supporting people that I knew a little bit about. Rita Rapp, I knew, who was the person who sorted out the food and made astronauts eat actually not rubbish, but something they wanted to eat. So I got kind of maybe 25 names that way. And then I had to go, well, who else? And so I was, you know, thumbing through my books, talking to people, sort of digging out these unknown things. But then the most exciting bit was, even for the people who I knew about, and then I had to do the research. I had to go and find out about their lives. And that, I uncovered all sorts of things that even I didn't know after years of knowing about them and knowing their sort of exciting stories. So that was really lovely to go, you know, dig through the biographies, discover the unknown stories, discover where they came from. And what I really then sort of saw is, the more I got into these, was drawing out these threads of how many people had done things in spite of the world telling them that they shouldn't do it, or they couldn't do it because of what they looked like or where they came from or what they were interested in. And that to me became the underlying thread that sort of ran through everything. And I hope people who read it just go, yeah, I can do what I want to do, because the only person ever getting in the way of you doing what you want to do is you, really. It's you know, you can be your biggest worst enemy. Just go get on with it. It's great.
I mean, and on that, we've got a question here, so I'm going to throw one straight in here. You know, anybody can do anything. Is it possible to work in the space industry, even if you haven't sort of gone through a university route? You're a non-university type person. Can you still get into the space industry?
Absolutely. There are apprentices all over the place. People come in later in their career. It's not an industry that you have to enter at the first thing. And the biggest thing is that you can come from all sorts of different backgrounds. The first thing to say, right, is a complete industry. So we've got the engineers, we've got the scientists, we've got that lot, but we've got accountants and we've got lawyers and we've got communications people. We've got people who run the Twitter accounts of all the space companies and so on. There's all sorts of different things you can do and be telling the story of space. But yeah, you can, some people have engineering degrees, some people go off and do degrees in all sorts of things, come into it. I say there are apprentice programs, there are great student programs out there. If space is something that you think, that's interesting, that's what I want to go get involved in, oh my goodness me, the industry's there, it's growing all the time. There's something like 40 or 50,000 people in it at the minute, and it's just going to keep growing because we all use space every single day. And we've got to keep those spacecraft up there that enable us to figure out where we're going and to talk to people. Yeah, come join the industry.
And is there a place that people could go to find that information? Is there like a kind of, you know, .com.co.uk sort of website that people could go and find out more about how they get into the industry?
Yeah, there's a great site called Space Careers, and I'm going to get the end of it wrong. I think it's spacecareers.uk. And that's actually been set up by the Student Society, the student group called UK SED, so the UK Students for the Exploration and Development of Space. I was a chair of that group, oh goodness me, 20 something years ago, but it's still going strong. But they set up this website really aimed at students helping to get in and sort of see the different roles and the entry points, and there's loads of resources there. But it's actually a great resource for anyone who's looking at joining the industry, because you can say there's so much there about the different sorts of roles and the different entry points. And then, you know, there's the UK Space Agency there as a leader. There's UK Space, who is the industry body. Loads of different people to go talk to, find out, like everything, talk to people, network. You know, there's loads and loads of stuff out there.
And that's a really important message as well, is it is an industry. So there's every job. You know, you could even work in catering, I would think, at a big office complex that's in the space industry. So you can work in space and help the people working in space, who are the engineers in that area. If you don't just think about people who are working in space as the engineers, that's the main thing there, isn't it?
It really is. And then that's to say what I wanted to pull out in the book, that there's all these different roles. And it's not just for the boys. People still think about the space industry being a male-dominated place. And it is, I won't take that away, but it's changing, and it's certainly welcoming to everybody. There's always more we can do. But for me, growing up, I kept sort of being told, I studied physics, I did an engineering degree, and there was this sort of thing, oh, you're a girl, it's really hard. And that barrier was presented to me before I even sort of tried to get through it. And you can imagine these barriers. And my message really is, yes, it's male dominated, but don't let that put you off. It's not that you're not welcome. Everybody's welcome. You know, it's not like it was back in the 60s when really you got looked at and went there in the corner, you know, you're a woman, you really can't think. It's not like that at all these days.
But now, coming back to talking about sort of women and equality and all that, but you know, why don't more of us know about the women who are in the books? You know, there's some fantastic examples of amazing women and what they've done. Why haven't they had the recognition that perhaps they deserve? And we heard more about them, and it's brilliant that you brought them to life. But what made you have to do it, and they're not being in the public domain already?
I think it comes back to the fact that it is a male-dominated industry. And I mean, the people in this book go right back. I went all the way back to Emily de Châtelet, who I'd never heard of, but she translated the Principia, I think, into French. She started bringing the rules that govern everything that's in space to the people. And she was working on that whilst pregnant and knowing that she might not go so well because she was late in life and so on. And indeed, she tragically died, but got this work finished. But I've gone right back from there, right through the history of the space the space sector, the space history, that space race, to me, is where my interest starts. That technical superiority fight between the US and the Soviet Union, the daring as everybody had to go and figure out what was going on. And that was male dominated. There were women there, but of course their stories were suppressed, they weren't promoted, there wasn't the books written about them, you've got to go digging more. And so that's where we're sort of through, I think, when history, that's why they're not there. There's someone in the book, Mary Sherman Morgan, who was another person I'd never heard of. Now, she invented the rocket fuel, literally invented it, that put the very first American satellite in space, the answer to Sputnik. She was a chemist, superb chemist, didn't have a degree because she had gone off to help the American war effort. When the space guys came along and said, we need some help, we need you new rocket fuel, to her company, the engineers there knew Mary was the right person for the job, but they went, no, she's a woman, she can't be the right person, which, you know, back at the times. Anyway, she did it all. She left not long after, raised a family. It was all very hush hush, so she didn't tell anyone. The stories about her only came out when her son, I think, went to her funeral, started chatting to her friends, and started discovering how amazing his mum's early life had been. So they get buried. People don't share it. The ones in the past just weren't even written down because of the time. So it's terrible. We need to celebrate everybody doing everything really these days.
Absolutely. And you know, your love of space obviously comes through whenever we chat, but did the expertise and your knowledge of space help when writing the book, or you know, do you think you could just turn that kind of knowledge of book writing now to any subject and how you go about it, or do you need to have that love to start with on your first book?
I think for me, it was easier to start writing about something I really knew about and have known, you know, lived, breathed, and so on. But one of my earlier jobs was an instructor. I got into teaching, and I was teaching flight controllers how to use the tools and the skills and everything they needed to fly space stations. And that's where I learned really to take a subject, go and talk to the experts, go and absorb all that knowledge, and then try and break it down into what somebody who's never come across it before has done. And I love doing that. I seem to do it okay. So now that to me is the real skill in a book, and it's taking something and sharing it with an audience who know nothing. Now, it's easier to do with space. I know it inside out. But I do think it's these days I go, oh, what else could I want to go and learn about? And then you sort of go on that journey and share it. And who knows, I'd like to write some more books. We'll see what they end up being about, but I'd like to do something not about space one day.
And do you think it's always going to be kind of engineering, technology, people who've changed kind of, you know, how people live their lives and how they have gone through the sort of stuff that makes engineering technology tangible? Or do you think you're going to go off and write about, you know, something completely different?
I've got no idea, and can't wait to find out where life leads me. I do know that I am at heart an engineer, a problem solver. And my second book, which was Space Explorers, is told that history of what happened in the early days. And it was a book I wish I had as a kid. But what I really, really wanted to make sure was that it was factually accurate. So many space stories are so amazing. They get made into films and you think, oh, they can't possibly be true. And then sometimes they'll go and be, you know, extra stuff sprinkled in, a bit of dramatic tension here. You don't need to do that with space. And I'm very much I want to know what happened and why, and stick to the truth. And I think that will, I hope, always come through in my writing. I'm a bit fastidious about what really happens. I'm not very good. Can't see me writing a novel. Who knows?
Brilliant. Now we've got a question coming here, which is, do you think that one day there'll be humans living on Mars, and could that be a reality in the future, especially in our futures, you know, depending on how old we are, obviously?
Yes. And I think I will see that in my lifetime. Now, living, I'm going to say we're going to have a human mission to Mars that will get to the surface, and some astronauts will live and work there for a confined period of time before they come home. I think it's a longer term prospect of real colonization, which some people, you know, out there are talking about and trying to do. I also, we were chatting, to me, famously, it's only famous to me, someone told me once about MP3s and how they were going to change our life, and I couldn't see it at all. So my ability to predict the future, I think, is not the greatest. But we will. Space agencies around the world are striving towards this horizon goal of getting humans to the moon. Getting humans to Mars. And it's been there on that horizon 20, 30 years away for ages. When we landed on the moon in the 1970s, we were going to be on Mars by the year 2000. In the year 2000, we were going to be there by 2030. Here we are in 2022. I think we'll do it before 2050. We are now getting ready to send humans back to the moon to learn how to live and work outside of this magnetic field that protects us all every day. And it's all about pushing there to that's the current mad crazy thing, right? Once upon a time it was what's over the ocean and what's up that hill. Now it's, well, we've got to go try live on another planet, and yeah, we will.
Now I've got a question here that is from me, because I was reading about it earlier, and I'm not an engineer. So there's been this talk today in the press about life could exist on a planet orbiting a white dwarf star. Have you seen this? And it's 117 light years away from Earth. Now, how, you know, compared to Mars, that's a long way away, isn't it? Right? Are we ever going to get to the point, do you think, with space travel, that we can travel closer to that speed of light so we can get further away, or are we always going to be confined quite close in?
The laws of physics are going to be our biggest enemy, I think. Trying to break those. Even if we talk about sending spacecraft out and humans out, well, you still fundamentally at the minute need to communicate back to Earth, the mothership. And we can't break the speed barrier. When we send humans to Mars, we were just talking about that. The delay, the time it's going to take for light to get from Earth to Mars, at its closest, it's something like 8 minutes. At its most distant is getting on for half an hour. So you've got a round trip travel time of your voice message of an hour. So we can't have this kind of conversation. Any communication on Mars is going to be packetized and sort of like sending emails back and forth. You're not going to have that real-time support. Imagine if you send a spacecraft out. You know, it's taking something like, it takes hours for the signals to get out to Voyager, which are out on the edge of the solar system now. So, we'll do it, and we'll come up with new technology, and maybe people are going to figure out those things you see in sci-fi. But I still think the laws of physics is the biggest challenge. But the really interesting thing about that white dwarf one, for me, is that you say it's 100 odd light years away. Now, people go, oh, are aliens out there? Yes, life form aliens, in my opinion, got to be out there somewhere. The universe is way too big. Are we going to see them? Are we going to talk to them? We've been communicating and sending these radio waves, our TV signals, our radio signals. We've been sending them out into the solar system for about 100 years. Now, in geological time, that is a blink, literally a blink of an eye. It's just nothing. So if this white dwarf has got life on it, well, you know, we might see it, but then if maybe we can communicate with it, 100 years, we might, if somehow all life carried on and evolved at the same rate, we might be in a place where maybe our two, you know, civilizations are going to line up. I mean, I don't think this is true. I think the chances are just crazy. But yeah, you start thinking, how big is the solar system? How big is our little imprint of radio waves that people would know we were here? And it's only gone 100 years out. It's nothing. Which
is not far, is it? It's amazing. No. So it's such a vast, I mean, working in space is such a vast kind of eye-opener of how big everything is. It's almost impossible to imagine, you know. Now, you know, let's go quickly back to the book here. You included a whole section to be filled in by the reader. Why did you want to include that? What was behind that in your brain when you sort of thought it through?
I wanted people to engage with this and to spark ideas and go, what can I do? What would I like to do? Whether it's in space, to be honest to me, whether it's in anything at all. I remember I was giving a talk to some school children, local school, and I guess they were 14, 15, 16, that sort of time in life where I think you really are starting to think, what do I want to do with my life? I'm going to do my, exams. And there was a kid, there was a girl at the back. I was talking about this book, and she was not very interested, a bit fidgety. And there I was talking about space, and her teacher said, "Oh, Josephine, I don't remember her name, but Josephine. Imagine Josephine wanted to go into space. I mean, she likes football, but imagine she wants to go into space. What would you tell her to do?" I said, "Well, if she likes football, I'd tell her to go work in that." And the beam on her face was amazing. That somebody was saying, "You can take this thing you enjoy and go get a job in it. If you like football, you could go be a sports commentator, you could be a physiotherapist, you could be a trainer. There's so much you can do in that field of sport." And that's what that bit at the end is all about, is going, there's all these different things. What do you want to do? What do you enjoy doing? And go have the courage and the belief to go and do it. Just, the only person stopping you is you. Don't listen to all the people who tell you that it's not right for you or it's not what you want to do.
And we talk about it a lot, that even sort of in an engineering, product design, whatever it might be, you still need people who come up with the creative ideas, the look and feels, how it impacts us and how we use things. And that's not necessarily an engineer. That can be somebody who works at amazing drawing, or somebody who understands mobility and how things work and tactileness. So that must be the same in space. There must be lots of different areas that not necessarily are, the people designing the ship and the motors, but actually all the rest of things of how they work and how you use them.
It's all there, and it all comes together. And it's, we have people sewing parachutes. We've got people, sorting out the design of massive buildings. We've got, lawyers are one of those people things. You've got lawyers in space. We got to figure out who owns the moon and what happens, with the different spacecraft. We've got licensing, loads of stuff. And I was going to say that to me, I think you have to get people to go back to that creativity when we were 5 or 6. You ask a kid what they want to do, and they go, "I want to be a fireman," or "I want to be a zookeeper, lunch person provider," or something. And they aren't encumbered by sort of normality, and their minds go mad. But it is that crazy 6-year-old who's right. Any job you can think of exists, so go do it. If you really think, "I'd really love to be coloring in the spacecraft or doing that design," or "I really want to go design an architect thing on the moon," somebody's got that job somewhere. It's true of everything.
Now I've got a great one coming here, which is, will, in your opinion, we see one day a parastronaut, a disabled person in space, and why? And if so, what sort of differences will it make to disabled people and to children's aspirations?
Yes, we are. We are going to do that. The European Space Agency right now is selecting someone with a disability to go into space, which I think is just fantastic. They're about halfway through the selection program at the minute. They are looking for, their advert was for people, limited set of disabilities, of short stature, or a disability with a leg, sort of amputation, I think below the knee. And forgive me if I get some of the language wrong. But yeah, they're there, and they're making those steps. And it's about saying, you know what, in space, you don't need your legs. It's all about the hands. So let's open that up, and let's start breaking down those barriers. They will select someone. They're very open that there's still some things to be thought about. Got to make sure everybody's safe. Got to make sure any adaptations that are needed are there, but we can do it. So why not? Let's go do it. So we'll see them fly in a few years' time, and it will be wonderful, because it will, again, just start to break down those barriers, open things up. Optics are so important for people imagining that they can do it. In science and technology, people didn't see women around, so they didn't think women were welcome, which they weren't. They are now. We need to keep having those images open so that everyone's free to do the stuff that they're best at, because then everyone benefits from it. You do stuff you enjoy, you do it well, we all benefit. There is no fun for anyone who thinks they love maths and engineering to just not do it because they're frightened that they shouldn't because they've got long hair or because they've got the wrong colour skin or something. It's just no good comes of that.
And it's transforming itself really quickly, that kind of whole area, isn't it? And we've seen, the sort of privateers changing the market for that, with, obviously for getting big PR and all the rest of it. And, but it is changing rapidly. And I think that's going to be something really exciting coming up, isn't it?
Yeah, that commercial space is coming. It's coming quickly in that way that new things come along really quickly. There's a lot of people right now, rightly, saying, oh, these millionaires, billionaires, they're spending all their money racing toys into space. But what we're seeing with the Virgin Galactic flights, that technology will lead, I think, to perhaps suborbital hops from London to Sydney. And there are people who go, that's more environmentally friendly because you're not sending a big jumbo jet through the upper atmosphere. You've got quick rocket burn, glide up and down. And so we might see that happen. What SpaceX are doing on the International Space Station, it's rich people coming along, rich stuff going to space, but that's money that is not having government money. It's leading to more technology spin out. In space, the only tech power comes from the sun. You have to live in a closed recyclable loop. So we get a lot of spin out of technology from forcing ourselves into space. So that's going to come. And I say to kids today, and I mean it, I think they can start saving up and going into space. I used to see Concorde fly over, and it was a kind of mad dream, but maybe I'd save some money up and go fly on that one day, and it's sadly not there. But kids can start saving. They'll be able to go into space if they want to.
Yeah, because the price will come down over the time that they're, absolutely.
You think about what air travel was at the beginning. It was for the rich and famous, and it was very luxurious. And now we all, possibly too much, hop around the world on these planes. But that's the way life goes. That's the way technology progresses. And we'll see the same with space travel, and we'll see where it ends up.
Now, another quick question we've got here is, and to be honest, this is all I've got, is how are ecosystems emerging on other planets?
Okay, well, we've got to define ecosystem, but to me, the ecosystem that is growing is this economy. That's the ecosystem. What happens to it, what becomes of it, really good questions. Loads of ethical questions there, who owns things, but there are people looking at the moon. That's why there's stuff going there, and there are people looking at the moon saying, oh, can I go and make some money? There are rocks there are resources, can they come back? And so sorry, there was a massive knock at the door. That's why I've just like live television.
Always happens. Always happens.
I'm ignoring it. But yeah, so these ecosystems, that ecosystem, that economy is growing in low Earth orbit, where we're going to see manufacturing. Maybe it's going to happen on the moon. Out on Mars, I'd like to hope that the ecosystem is still very much Martian. There's a load of massive effort. Anytime a spacecraft goes to Mars, we don't want to take Earth with us, because we don't want to alter the balance of the chemistry on Mars. So I hope the Martian one is remaining as it is, and we're not interfering with that.
Brilliant. Well, look, there's a knock at the door, and we're coming up to the end of our little chat now. So, I suppose lastly, the last question is if there are more hidden stories out there, how do we as an engineering community, how do we do our bit to make sure then they don't remain hidden? And are you open for people sending all these stories to you? What should we be doing with them?
Yeah, the first thing I think to do is to go and talk to your elders. Actually, go and find out about those things, because I think that generation, there wasn't social media, there wasn't Twitter, we didn't put all of our lives online. So those stories get lost into history. So go value and treasure the stories of your grandparents, find out what they were doing. And when they were doing amazing things and contributing to those things, shout about them, make sure it gets written down. And then I think, when you see something, share it, amplify it, tell these people there. I'm always collecting stories for the next book if it comes along. And just, go ask. One of the things, back to the book, shows you hidden stories. I wanted to tell the tale of the women who made the Apollo spacesuits. They sewed them all. They're known. They were the women who made the hard disks. They literally threaded copper wire through rings to make the hard disks, because they were this was solid state in the 1960s. Landed on the moon, and they were known as the little old ladies. Not politely. They were really skilled watchmakers, people who had got really intricate fingers. You can go online today and watch the YouTube videos of the guys, the men, the managers explaining what's going on, all the women behind them. Nothing there. Could I get any of their names? They're just lost in history. I found one in the end. But yeah, just go find out what your grandparents did, and then stick something on your social media account just to, share their stories if you have their permission.
Absolutely. Well, look, thank you so much for joining us, Libby. I mean, a really great read, fantastic stories, and we truly appreciate the time you've taken to join us live today. A quick reminder as well, just before we go, the next episode in this series is Broadband, the untold story of women who made the internet, with Claire Evans, on the 8th of March. So Libby, from us, thank you so much. I hope you've enjoyed being with us.
Thank you. It's been a delight. Thanks so much. Great to see you.
All right, and from everybody who's watching out there, thank you for taking all the questions as well. Have a great rest of 2022, and when the next book's out, we'll definitely see you again.
Yeah. Cheers then. Thanks.
Thank you.